Nosferatu, Wrath of Malachi is a very intriguing game. At first glance, it's some kind of horror shooter adventure game. The premise, theme, and quick look at screenshots looks very appealing to me. Games set in this gothic vampire aesthetic are surprisingly hard to come by. Even more in the FPS genre. That's all I needed to know to be curious to pick this one up. It's also a PC exclusive, and the developer shut down shortly afterwards. The game doesn't give you much to go by. It starts off with this really cool intro cinematic about how you're on a trip to visit your relatives in some faraway spooky castle on a hill. But when you get there, they're all held captive by evil forces. So you're on a mission to save them. Then, the game starts off in a courtyard, and you make your way deeper into the castle, periodically returning back to the courtyard as you get more keys and unlock more wings of the mansion. But the game does a poor job of explaining itself. I had an extremely frustrating, terrible first impression of this game. For starters, everything is on a time limit. You have a dozen or so relatives you can rescue, and they will each slowly automatically die depending on how much time has passed. This makes it so you pretty much have to speedrun the entire time. The game is designed around that. You can't take your time to admire the atmosphere, scenery, or levels. It's just go, 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 non-stop. I didn't realize this. It wasn't immediately obvious. So my first time playing, I had the most important character, the priest, die on me, and I didn't know what the hell's going on. It annoyed me quite a lot. Not only that, but when I did find relatives to rescue, I didn't even know where to bring them back. The answer is right at the beginning of the game. You can simply turn around to open some big gate, which is the safe area with a glowing circle, as well as lots of trunks, which they open for you, and they give you buffs. Well, I didn't think to turn around and open this door. I probably thought it was just decoration, so that's another thing that was poorly explained and just confusing. At the point where the most crucial character died, the priest, and I realized I should probably just reset the game, I was already fed up with it. That's because the general gameplay is kind of atrocious and doesn't make sense. I also didn't realize this. The game is randomly generated, mostly. The castle has certain set pieces, like the courtyard, the east wing, the west wing, and so on. And it has different styles of rooms, like different chunks. But these chunks get randomly swapped around when you make a new game, as well as I guess the keys and the items in the chests. Even when you start a new game, it says randomly generating new castle. I didn't know what to make of it when I first started. I thought it was maybe just a quirky way to say loading. Fundamentally what this means is that the game has messed up balance and a bizarre difficulty curve. The general gameplay has you going through this labyrinth of a castle looking for keys and looking for relatives to escort back to the safe zone. But before I could do any of that, I was getting destroyed by basic combat. The game is heavy on combat. I didn't know what to expect, but it's mostly non-stop.
This kind of sucks.
The thing is, it also has a heavy focus on melee. At the beginning of the game, it only gives you this sword and your fists. So you're going around this linear castle, having waves of enemies dumped at you, like dozens upon dozens of goblins, monsters, dogs, and all you have to defend yourself is this horrible sword weapon that barely has any reach. It actually reminds me of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Anyone sane would think the sword would naturally be better than your fists. Yeah, that's your first mistake. I was struggling with this piece of shit sword for quite a while. It's basically impossible to use it without taking constant damage.
Shit. I might put this on the easiest fucking difficulty. This shit is so stupid. The fucking combat is awful.
And the game only has 3 difficulties: easy, medium, and hard. I picked medium. No way I ever play a game on easiest difficulty. Well, this game is no walk in the park. The enemy AI is bullshit. Jutting around randomly, the animations are atrocious. The animations look like they're 10 FPS. The general programming of the game is abysmal. The enemies glide around, float around, fly across the screen randomly with crap physics. Couple this with horrible melee combat, it becomes a frustrating mess.
You're here, James.
Fucking damn it!
The melee combat turns into nothing more than trading blows and hoping there's enough health kits around to make up the difference. This is also made even worse by the game's awful stamina system. If you sprint for more than half a second, you start panting to yourself, and the screen starts wobbling around and shaking. Even moving normally half depletes your stamina. Then trying to use melee on top of it is a recipe for frustration and tedium. At least when you are fully exhausted you can still move and attack, but the whole system is just stupid and feels obnoxious to engage with. Not too long into the game, you do find your first gun. It's a flintlock pistol. Okay, great. No more shit melee combat, I thought. Well, the issue is even the controls with the guns are screwed up. Something as simple as the HUD ammo count is confusing. You'd think the number on the left is the currently loaded, and the right is the total ammo. You know, like how every game does it. But no, it's the opposite here. That screwed me up. Then, if you press the reload button, at any time it seems to dump your ammo and waste your ammo on you, punishing you for doing so. Then, the act of reloading your gun is just a glitchy, buggy mess. Half the time it fails to reload, or it does the animation twice, or it glitches up. You try to shoot, but it glitches and starts half reloading, or you think you have ammo, but then magically you don't. Even more confusing is the fact that your guns can say 0 bullets, but actually you can carry 2 of the same gun. And if you press the button to switch the gun again, you can pull another one out with just a few bullets. None of that makes any sense. But worse than that is the fact that I barely got any ammo on my first try around. I would get like 10 bullets, but then be up against 50 enemies, forcing myself to use the awful melee. I'd be picking up all sorts of ammo like the machine gun bullets, revolver bullets. Meanwhile, all I have is a stupid sword and this flintlock pistol. Why does it give you so much ammo of weapons that you can't get early on? Oh yeah, because the game is randomly generated, and the balance sucks. Also, there's rooms with portals that spawn infinite enemies, and I didn't realize you could destroy these portals. So that really screwed me over. It seemed like an impossible challenge to deal with all of this, while having no ammo and terrible melee. And besides these portals, it seems like the game randomly spawns enemies all around you infinitely. It's like this never-ending tedium and annoyance. The game is really stressful trying to get you to speedrun and ignore everything, it seems like, or else you just constantly get overwhelmed and lose all your resources. Eventually I experimented with the fists, and to my absolute shock, they are way superior. The reason is because the fists stun lock enemies, so you walk right up to an enemy, and then you do nothing but spam the fist attack, and the enemy is guaranteed to get stun locked and you kill them, without taking damage every time. Only when there's multiple enemies does this not work.
The fist is better
Get
than
us
the
out
sword.
of here, James!
What a stupid game. The fist is genuinely way better than the sword, because you just constantly stun lock them.
Why the hell is the fist better than the sword? Did they playtest this? So my initial attempt playing the game, the priest guy died on me because I didn't understand what the hell I was in for. I almost uninstalled the game right there and wrote it off. But the next day I said screw it and started it up again. I started a new save with the new knowledge I had. The game has a typical classic FPS save system. That is to say, you just quick save constantly. But it's even worse here. Since the game is so difficult and bullshit, and there's barely any ammo, I was quick saving every 15 seconds. Yeah, it's one of those kind of games. On this next attempt, I began with this new knowledge of how to use the janky gun reloads, how the sword is garbage, and how the fist is way better. The knowledge of where to bring the escorts to save them. I ran straight to the beginning doctor guy, and escorted him back to the safe zone, and finally managed to make some good progress. The game's greatest strengths is by far the presentation and setting. The general idea of going to this gothic castle and rescuing your relatives, and even the fact that the set pieces are randomly generated could be cool. I dig what they're going for. I appreciate that it's having to have this unique identity. The graphics are cool, and some rooms glow with different colors, which make things pop out and look mystical and intriguing. The audio is strange. Lots of weird sounds of people yelling and shouting and banging around.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
The soundtrack is kind of quirky, but at the same time a bit annoying, because the weirdest thing is the technical, low-quality audio. It sounds like 60 kilobytes per second audio or something. It's very low bitrate, ugly-sounding audio. It sounds like an N64 game. This can make the audio a bit grating to listen to after a while. I don't know why it's so low in quality. The game isn't that old. By 2002, there's no excuse to have such low quality audio. When you press tab, you get this neat little screen showing you all the people you can save, who you saved, and who died. By the end of the game, I naturally somehow managed to save everyone but Melissa. I looked it up, and it turns out that's fairly common. Melissa is programmed to always die at a certain amount of time, and since the game is randomly generated, she can spawn in such a place where it's near impossible to get to her by that time. So most people have her die on them. This goes to prove my point. The game is fundamentally designed in a way where it doesn't really make sense. It wants you to be slow and methodical to save all these relatives. It wants to be randomly generated, but the balance goes out the window. And escort missions where NPCs can randomly spawn in such a way where it's near impossible to get to them in time doesn't make sense. You might be thinking this is similar to Dead Rising. Well, I really like Dead Rising. The difference is, it's actually executed good in Dead Rising.
If you're sure about this, I'll stick around
Oh,
and
okay.
your back.
I'll wait right here.
Fucking... This game is
Get us
total
out of here,
shit.
James. Oh, okay.
If
I'll
you're
wait right
sure
here.
about this,
Fucking...
I'll stick around until you're back. I'll follow you anywhere, James.
Before too long, I started getting keys. I started making my way through the castle. You get a flintlock rifle, which is pretty much the same thing as the pistol. It uses the same ammo, but it has a stupid looking crosshair. I guess it shoots further? There's a crucifix item, but it's mostly useless except for shooting a very specific type of ghost enemy. That was another weapon that confused me in the beginning. You get a revolver for saving a certain NPC, but the revolver is borderline useless. It's the weakest gun in the game. It takes 3 shots to kill the most basic enemy, while the flintlock takes 1. The starter priest guy gives you this chalice, where you throw holy water at enemies, and you can refill it from these ponds you can make with the crucifix on certain basins, a mechanic I also barely understood until the game was almost over. This chalice trivializes the few boss fights in the game, so much so that it makes them feel underwhelming. The other weapons suck. The game's combat in general sucks. There's a wooden stake, and I couldn't even find any use for it. You stab it into enemies, and it doesn't seem to do shit. I guess it works on a few vampire types, but I'd rather just shoot them than fumble with the controls to switch to the stake for 2 seconds. At pretty much the end of the game, you get a machine gun that you get to use for like 10 minutes, and that's it. The game has around a dozen NPCs you can rescue, but the AI for escorting them is as usual awful. You need to babysit these idiots. Keep looking behind you to make sure they're coming. They frequently just randomly stop and won't follow you. You have to walk up to them and press E. But there's no visual feedback or cue that it worked. Sometimes they'll say, okay, I'll follow you, but it's inconsistent.
Oh my god, come on. Can you fucking move?
The terrible thing is that if you're both near a door and you press E to open it, well, you'll also tell the NPC to stop following you, which turns into this annoying juggle of trying to tell them to follow you again. It's a mess. Luckily, some of them can fight monsters and fend for themselves, and they're not so weak that they die easily. Just the general task of getting them to follow you is a pain. The weirdest thing with saving the NPCs is some of them will just give you these odd buffs or temporary boosts. They open their trunks and there's items you can get inside. Like one of them gives you the seemingly permanent movement speed boost, which makes you zip and zoom around the game, like something comical. It feels out of place and looks stupid. It makes the game feel even more clunky and odd, but at least it's sped up the playthrough. And another one gives you a stamina boost. Another one gives you this temporary garlic buff. which was supposed to keep the vampires away. I didn't really notice a difference. Another one gives you regenerating health for 6 minutes. One of them gives you a protective vest, which I suppose makes you take less damage. And these NPCs are how you usually unlock guns too. This is how you get the revolver and the machine gun. So I guess if you do a really bad job at saving the NPCs, you can miss out on all this cool stuff and make the game even more of a chore. But it was kind of exciting to see what kind of new stuff I would unlock for bringing these NPCs back, so there is that. The game's basic structure is starting off going through the East Wing. You get keys, save NPCs, you go up to the top and do this boss fight, you drop down and stab a stake into these important vampires and caskets, get more keys, get to the West Wing, and then do the same kind of stuff. At one point you drop down into this pit with a giant monster, but I sort of just sat in the corner and stabbed him while he couldn't hit me. It visually looked cool, but it was a disappointing fight mechanically. Then you go through the West Wing, saving more NPCs, getting more keys. This time it introduces some new enemies, like flying bats and more demonic looking creatures. You get a main castle key, then you make your way to the main castle, which is just a giant labyrinth of almost copy-pasted, confusing, tedious rooms. Then you save a few more NPCs, you run back and forth. Eventually, when you save everyone, or there's no one left, you get a message saying, "It's morning soon." And then you get to the main castle, you go back, find the basement. There's a portal in the basement, where you fight the Count himself. This fight looks cool. He's the classic-looking 1920s Nosferatu. But mechanically, again, it's disappointing. He just glides around and smacks you, and shooting him doesn't do anything. Your sister is here, and apparently you can't save her. She always gets killed. You just have to go around the arena flicking these levers on the wall, until a sunbeam shows up, and you guide him into the sunbeam. The assets are cool, the idea is cool, but again, weak execution. Then you fall into a pit, fight the final boss that looks just like some weird dinosaur. And again, I just used the chalice, which is too overpowered. I flicked some holy water on him a few times, and in 5 seconds I beat the last boss, and that's the game. It shows you a cutscene where you and your friends leave, and then there's the end credits. That's Nosferatu. Thematically, it's amazing. It's almost this kind of survival horror, randomly generated weird unique game. But almost every facet of execution is disappointing. Mechanically, the game just sucks. The whole concept of this randomly generated castle, plus feeling the need to constantly speedrun to do these escort missions, is bad. The balance is bad, the physics and movement sucks, the animations are bad, the AI sucks. It's so disappointing. But I would be lying if I said I didn't at least somewhat enjoy myself, even for the cool atmosphere and presentation. At first I downright hated this game, but after understanding it a bit, I kinda just tolerated it and saw it to the end. At least it only took 4.5 hours to finish. 5 out of 10.